Welcome, I'm Jon Caldara, president of the Independence Institute and your devil's advocate. Later on, we're going to be talking about third parties. Do they have a shot in Colorado? But first, the Doublemint twins of the state capitol. Kristen Wyatt from the AP, good to have you.
Thanks for having me.
And Schrader from the Gazette, welcome.
Thanks.
Do people actually think you guys are related?
People call me Megan, and I always say, if you want to take 10 years and 10 pounds off me, you just go right ahead.
So you basically,
So it never bothered me.
you're the Coors Light twins of the state capitol. All right, you do with that whatever you wish. Let's talk about some of the things that we know are going to be on the ballot. Of course, we've got all the usual stuff that comes around, but the wild card in Colorado politics are the initiatives. That's what's fun. Those are the things I like more, because you get a sense of where people are on issues, not just personalities. What's the big one that you're watching?
I think everyone's talking about Amendment 69. It would create a universal health care system in Colorado, paid for by an extra payroll tax on everyone who works. I think everyone is kind of curious to see how Colorado voters are going to go on this one.
I think this one's going to go down in flames. Hell, Hillary Clinton is against it, and now Progress Now has joined our side and is against it.
But Bernie Sanders himself, Senator Bernie Sanders, might come to campaign for this. I don't know if you recall, but he did pretty well in Colorado.
He did very well in Colorado among socialists, but the rest of us Americans, I don't know if that's going to fly. Do you?
Apparently there's a couple socialists in the state, and they vote.
Yeah, you can go back to California if you're one of them. Anyway, 69, this is really the first in the nation big, huge overhaul of healthcare. It takes away Obamacare, which is how they got their signatures. They would go down to places like Colorado Springs and say, hey, sign this, we'll get rid of Obamacare. But this brings in Canadian-style care to Colorado, right?
Mm-hmm. But it's fascinating to watch, because you're definitely starting to see some splintering on the left. For a long time, it was sacrilegious to say anything against Obamacare. Obamacare was the only solution. Obamacare was going to bring down the price of health care. Now, even recently, this Aetna news, a major health insurer pulling out of the whole caboodle, we're starting to see more people that were part of Obamacare or supported for Obamacare or maybe defended Obamacare loudly now saying, maybe this isn't the end-all be-all that's going to save health care for everybody. Let's keep talking. And so Colorado is an easy state to get on ballots. That's why you're going to see a lot of discussion about getting on ballots in the first place. But I think it's fascinating to watch if we are the first, and I still think it's a long shot. Even supporters know it's a long shot. But it is fascinating to have this debate. Is Obamacare, the system we have now, going to reduce the cost of health care?
Now this, for people who don't know, whether you want single-payer health care or not, this basically doubles the size of the state government overnight. A massive, massive tax increase. And the power of what gets covered and how you get treated goes to a board that isn't directly elected. So bureaucrats get to be in charge of our health care. Is that basically it?
Sure, and their argument's going to be they're more accountable than the current boards of the private health insurers that control your health care decisions now. Don't you hate these big guys, whoever your health insurer is, they poll worse than government, if you can believe that.
Yeah, but our health care policy now is not made by those guys in private.
Sure it is.
No, it's made by Obamacare. It says, here's what you will have, here's what you will be covered by. So insurance companies are now just utilities. They slap their 10% profit on it, but it's not like they get a charge or they get to draw up the plans. No, Obama has drawn up the plans, thus Obamacare.
Sure, but I would say it's unfair to say that it wasn't somewhat like that before Obamacare. There have been mandates on what insurers must cover well before Barack Obama was president.
And Colorado had among the highest level of mandated coverages here. Colorado, at least when I looked at this years ago, had something like 50 different separate mandates. You will be covered for this. You have to have maternity leave. You have to have drug cessation and smoking cessation, whereas our neighbors, Kansas, had 12 mandates. So anyway, who's in favor of this? Who's pushing it?
So physicians are really the big names behind this. You have Senator Irene Aguilar, who is a doctor at Denver Health, who is also on the board of Denver Health, and she's saying, look, I was tired of watching for years patients dying simply because they didn't have access to health care or health insurance to cover that care. And so she's motivated to do something about it.
But isn't it great, though, that we now force everyone to have health care insurance, thus Obamacare, so the problem's solved. We all have health care coverage. That's what the law says. So why do we need it?
So I think that they're saying still thousands of people in Colorado are falling through those cracks and aren't on Medicare or Medicaid and aren't being covered through an insurer and can't afford these private programs, so they want to fill those gaps. Let me just say that a lot of Democrats don't buy that. They say that for this population, this very vulnerable population who are in this middle, we need something somewhat less severe than universal health care.
Yeah, but what a repudiation of Obamacare, as we're seeing healthcare companies crippled here in Colorado and our premiums skyrocket, and you've seen it too because you get insurance. That the left is starting to split over. All right, this one doesn't go. I'm sorry, this one does not have a shot. You feel differently on this?
No, I'm shaking my head no, but not that I disagree with you. Yes, it has no shot. It's just an interesting academic discussion.
And an expensive one. All right, what else is on the ballot? Talk to me about the minimum wage proposal is now on the ballot. Is that right?
Yep.
What does it do?
It would raise our minimum wage to about $9 next year and then raise it $1 a year till we're at $12 by 2020. Or not $1 a year, but it would raise it until we're at $12 an hour by 2020.
Does it attach it to inflation?
I don't know that it does. What it does,
because we already
have that, and it does go in and redo our constitutional language that already exists to tie our minimum wage somewhat to the cost of living.
The Colorado Price Index.
Colorado Price Index.
And so, it'll still remain tied to that, and slowly go up after $12 an hour as well.
This one I bet passes, and I'm disgusted to see it because I think it's immoral. But it passes.
Immoral?
Immoral.
Why is it immoral?
It's immoral because it's a hate crime. Why is it a hate crime? Because for two people to have a mutually consensual relationship and for government to say no, you can't do it. If you two want to get married, you guys can go get married now, which is fine. It's good. It's great. But if you want to hire her and you want to go work for her at less than what the government says you have to, you guys are forbidden from having a relationship. No, I'm sorry. This is a bad thing on moral grounds. We can go through all the economics too, which is bad economics. But I think my side does a crap-ass job of selling this and fighting this on what it is. It takes people and says we're going to make relationships illegal, which I thought the left was against.
I think you're going to have the restaurant association, the businesses in town making a strong case. And they're going to cry doom and gloom and say, we can't afford this, we're going to go out of business, and then there will be no jobs. And whether or not that's true is hard to say, but that's what they're going to do, and that might be really effective with voters who are afraid of worst case scenario.
I hope so. And what scares me the most about it being tied in the Constitution to inflation is that you're too young. But I remember stagflation, where we had high unemployment and high inflation, people wanting to work, but they can't if the minimum wage goes skyrocketing along with inflation. So, but I think it passes. You?
I think it passes. But Colorado is the only state ever in the history of the United States that has seen its minimum wage go down in the depths of our recent housing recession because it is tied to the consumer price index. Our consumer price index dropped dramatically after the housing bust in early 09 or late 08. It did drop like a penny an hour. And that's the only time that's ever happened in any state in the United States. So it does kind of gird the left's argument, or the supporters of a minimum wage hikes argument, not the same as the left, that, hey, this does build it in more to what's going on in the economy. Obviously, that's an argument that doesn't wash with a lot of people.
Talk to me about raise the bar, what I'm going to call rig the bar, because I think this is the stealth one, this campaign, which is a bunch of people using the initiative process to kill the initiative process. Give it a description.
It is something that has, first of all, very similar things Coloradans have rejected twice before. It's a ballot measure that says, hey, voters, don't you think you're kind of stupid? Don't you think you don't know what you're doing and that it's too easy to do what you want to do? And what they're trying to do is capitalize on both sides, try to capitalize on the left's hatred of the Taxpayers' Bill of Rights to say we shouldn't have that, and then capitalize on the rights, maybe hatred either of legal marijuana or some other Amendment 23, a school funding measure. I think these measures are very popular with people from both parties who are in power. They're not popular with those people that vote who are not making law. So I don't know where this goes.
From my point of view, as a guy who has put things on the ballot and fought things on the ballot, if this thing passes, I will not be able to get a constitutional amendment on the ballot ever again. Rich guys might be able to do so, but those of us on the left and right, I mean, it's odd that I'm standing next to the folks at Common Cause as we stood up before against these attacks saying, no, we both want access to this. And it makes it more difficult. Not only is there a higher bar to pass an initiative, but it takes, you need to get petitions in each of the 35 Senate districts, 2% in each one, which makes it so wildly expensive. I could never do it. Maybe Tim Gill and Pat Stryker and crew can, but I can't.
Think of all of the petition gatherers who are going to be out of work because of this initiative.
Oh, no. They're going to make money off of this one because I think they'll be able to charge a ton. Now, I'm curious. This proposal says you need to get 55% to pass something, but yet it only takes 50% for this to pass. And I'm really curious, did they get 2%? 2% of all the signatures in each of the districts?
The most they will say is that they collected some signatures from each of the 35 state Senate. Some. And let me just say that going back and trying to verify or find out where they got is nearly impossible. I mean, because the Secretary of State's office in certifying this for the ballot didn't even go signature by signature. They just take a 5% random sample and say, if this is indicative of the rest of the signatures, yeah, that should be on the ballot. So no one will ever know. They say that they got some from each. 2%.
Some from each. Did they get 2% valid signatures from each of the 35 Senate districts? Have you ever asked them this?
They did. No, yeah, absolutely. They did say when they first announced the raise the bar idea, they did say they were aware that they would be really criticized if they didn't follow their own prescription. And so they said that we're going to take extra care to make sure we follow that. Now, like to Megan's point, frankly, it's impossible to test that because you'd have to have access to all of your signatures, which are not necessarily public, and that's a big lift. But they knew going in they were going to take a lot of crap.
But they won't even say, they will not say that they actually follow their own rules.
They don't know. They probably don't know.
Which they could put into the proposal. They could say, if this doesn't pass by 55%, it's not on the ballot, and if we didn't get 2% from each of the whatever districts, it's not valid. But they didn't do it because they know it's impossible to do.
And I think one of their arguments that is so interesting to me, their argument is that because it's easy in Colorado, we are subject to all this outside big money that could come in and, well, if their thing passes, it would get dramatically more expensive, to your point. And it's not that oil and gas can afford things, big pharma can afford things. It's activists that couldn't be able to afford to get on ballots.
Real fast.
That being said, though, they are just limiting the Constitution. So you could still run ballot proposals and initiatives and change state law. They're just saying not in the Constitution.
Yeah, but amazingly, we wouldn't have taper, we wouldn't have term limits, we wouldn't have open records, we wouldn't have open meeting laws, we wouldn't have the ethics law, we wouldn't have so many things that the people in the legislature despise. It's why every elected politician hates the initiative process, because it empowers people like you, and it's not bad. All right, I got to run. Thank you. Stay tuned.